All right, so I got all suited up here. My name is Jeff. Welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. Today we got all of our parts in for our 7 Series that we're going to be repairing now. I did open this, I'll be honest. Most of the time I try to open them on camera, but I was pretty excited and I wanted to see what was in each box. And I also needed to know what was in there so that if I was missing something, I could let ECS Tuning know so we could get those parts shipped out. Looks like everything's here. I did receive another box, but that is off camera right now. It is for another project that everyone will see here not too long from now. But we're going to focus on this. We did not get our suspension in. It wasn't actually at ECS Tuning's warehouse. They didn't have a set for this car in stock, which isn't super surprising. I don't know how many people are actually replacing the suspension on one of these 7 Series with a full coilover kit. But between the box that came earlier, these are the struts for the trunk and the hood. Those actually came separate. Those came from somebody else because ECS Tuning didn't have them. And the fourth one, there's 3 there, 2 for the back, 2 for the front. The fourth one is in here. So the rest of the list that we had when we went through and actually bought all of those things online, the rest of that should be in here. I did not get to open this, but we're gonna open up everything right now and go through and just see what we've got. Well, this is that is a perfect fit into that box. All right, so this is our power steering reservoir that we got ordered. This, I believe, is the only piece that's actually leaking in that system. So from what I can tell, that's all that needs. So we'll get that replaced. And let's move on to the big box. So here is our lower oil pan gasket. And then here is a valve cover gasket. This is Liquimoly. This is that oil, we talked about this in the last video, that actually glows when you put black light on it and stuff like that. It will glow so you can see if you've got any oil leaks, which is pretty cool. Obviously, you can't just put it in and then check it. You'd have to drive it for a while, but I'm actually pretty excited to get that tested. Here's the rest of the oil we'll need. BMW coolant. This is the undiluted, so you will have to add distilled water to it. This is our tensioner for the timing chain. Now, I haven't talked about this topic very much on this car. This is the non-technical update version of this V8 engine. So when the timing chain goes out, it's not as destructive as the ones that have the technical update. I personally don't know why that is, but apparently if you just replace this, you can greatly lengthen the life of your timing chain guides. So without turning into the front of the motor, we're gonna try this for a while. And then David, as David goes and drives the car and enjoys it as a daily driver, we'll just have to keep an eye out and listen for anything odd going on. Got our spark plugs, all 8 of them. Some power steering fluid. I don't think I will lose very much replacing this, but I got one of these just in case. Here is our transmission pan gasket. Here's the valve cover and the valve cover left and right, but here's a valve cover. I haven't done a valve cover on a V8 yet, so I might need all this. It's just a little confusing. So the straight 6 only has a couple pieces to it. You got your big piece, and you got the 2 little pieces that sit in the middle that have 3, the first 1, 2, 3 cylinders, and then the 4, 5, and 6. So I'll have to go through that and make sure that I know exactly what I've got here so that I don't need something or have something extra. And then we have our fuel filter here. Here is the 4th strut. Looks like this one is the hood. And then ECS Tuning sent us a oil change tag so we can put the date and mileage on there. We'll put that in the window. And then the last thing, I didn't actually know that it came with this, but here is a drain bolt. So I am actually missing something. I'm missing the oil filter, which comes with the new crush washer and the rubber ring that goes around the top of the oil filter housing cap. But I just got off the phone with ECS Tuning. They said because I've got so many things coming in different boxes to just kind of hang on because it's probably in a different box. So I'm not super worried about it. It will probably be coming as I get packages throughout the week. But for right now, I am going to be doing all of these projects to the 7 Series to get it all ready to go. Now, most of this stuff is super simple. You've got your spark plugs, an oil change, your power steering reservoir, power steering fluid change, and and it's just pretty standard stuff, nothing super special or important for everybody to see. So I'm just gonna kind of time lapse and go through and talk about some difficulties as I run into them. But for the most part, I want to come to the end of the video and actually talk about how easy or difficult it is to work on the 7 Series versus something super simple like the 3 Series. And luckily enough, the majority of these projects, in fact not all of them, can be done with the car basically on the ground or jacked up very slightly. So I won't even have to put the car up on the lift to do a lot of these projects, which I think is pretty cool to get all the leaks sorted and to just kind of get this thing refreshed and back on the road properly. It's not even gonna take that much work. But again, I'm gonna come back at the end of the video and talk a little bit more about that. So I'm gonna get my coveralls on so that I'm not rolling around on the floor with my nicer clothes and get these projects finished. All right, so I've got all suited up here.
My name is Jeff.
And I'm actually gonna start with something a little bit more fun. We'll do these hood struts and the trunk struts. I know this is a little overdressed for that, but when I get underneath the car and start replacing some of those gaskets, I'm gonna be happy I've got this on. So let's start with these first. And since we'll be under the hood a lot, I want to make sure the hood stays up and doesn't hit me in the head. So just got this replaced, only took about 10 minutes to do it. I would normally suggest replacing the fluid in this completely, but the fluid I was getting out of it was quite clean. So we're just gonna top this off, and then once we start the car and let it run and see if that noise stops, then we'll check the color again to make sure that we don't actually have to replace the whole thing. This doesn't hold very much, so if I fill this up and end up having to drain it, I'm only gonna lose maybe about a cup or so of the fluid. Worst case scenario, we'll just go to the store and buy another thing of that power steering fluid. All right, well, we are done for the night, and I know you're thinking, hey, what's up with all the stuff here and the car is still up? So I haven't refilled the oil yet. I've got one more gasket to do on the bottom. I'm just gonna let it sit overnight because it's just constantly dripping and it's gonna be hard to put the new gasket on. And I am gonna be using some gasket maker to help out that gasket at the bottom so that we're not leaking anymore. So I'm just gonna let the car sit overnight because it's just sitting there constantly dripping, so I can't put any oil in. And the coolant that I had to fix was just a loose line. So we're not actually having to use the coolant that we bought, but we might replace it because whoever did the coolant in this car, it's green and it's not actually BMW coolant, and I know there can be problems with that. So I still need to consult with David a little bit more, but we might just be doing a coolant flush, even though the coolant in there looked fine. It's really up to him, it's his car. And then for some reason, ECS Tuning sent us an extra gasket that was the wrong one. So I guess I just will get back in touch with them and send that one back. And that's why earlier I was really confused because I couldn't figure out what that gasket was. So we're gonna be done for tonight. I've just got a little bit of work left to do. I'll be cleaning up. But overall, let's talk about maintenance on a 7 Series. So we've learned that the parts aren't that expensive. Unfortunately, they are a little bit more scarce. It's hard to find more stuff locally versus like a 3 Series or even a 5 Series. Oftentimes you'll find 3 Series parts incredibly available. I'll go to an auto parts store and they've got brakes and rotors and coolant hoses and you name it. They've got all sorts of stuff in stock. And if it's not in stock, oftentimes it's like a day away or less than a day away. Like if you tell them first thing in the morning, sometimes they'll have something from their larger distributor just south of us, which is Salt Lake. Sometimes they can have that back up in a day. So unfortunately the 7 Series is a little bit more difficult when it comes to that kind of stuff. But working on the car itself, I would say it's only a little bit more difficult than this car. And I don't want to say that because it's a 7 Series. I want to say that because I was working on the V8, and the V8 is a little bit more difficult than the straight 6. And it's really only difficult because you just get fatigued. You're doing something twice. So like when I did the valve cover gaskets, it was about the same difficulty per side as my straight 6, but then you have to do the same thing on the other side. So it feels like you're doing it twice. Well, you are, but it feels like a lot more work. Even though it's not hard, it's just a lot of it. Everything else on the car was pretty simple. The engine bay actually isn't as big as you would think. It was very difficult to get those valve covers off the side, and I had some problems reaching different areas that I would not have guessed that I would have ever had any issues reaching in a car that was this big. And I know oftentimes size restrictions in the engine bay can make a car very difficult to work on, and I just felt like this engine bay, with as big as it is, should have been bigger on the inside. Nevertheless, I got everything done except for that one gasket and a couple fluids to put in the car. If you're looking into doing a 7 Series and you're worried about it, as long as you do your research and you do the work yourself, you shouldn't have any issues. The most intense thing is when you buy one of these cars and you go take it to a mechanic. He's gonna have a massive list and he's gonna charge you labor and parts. If you do the work yourself and you're a car enthusiast and you really love to work on cars and that's your hobby, then I would say absolutely, if this is the car you want, if you love the body style, you love the V8, whatever it is, I would say go for it. And I would really say that about most BMWs. If you work on them yourself, you learn how to do it, it really is just, you become so comfortable with the car. And I know many of you already know that. Even people that do other car brands. I know that I had a buddy that would do Subarus, and every time he saw a Subaru, he just knew exactly what was wrong with it. And I remember looking in the engine bay going, whoa, I have no idea what's going on. And I'm sure if he looked into my BMW engine bay, he'd say the same thing. So once you find your car brand and you really start to learn it, it'll get easier and easier over time. And again, I'm gonna say, if I had the opportunity to do this car again, I would. It was a great buy for the price. And so far, maintenance has been very manageable. So thanks everybody for watching. If you enjoyed, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and until next time, we will see you in the next video.